Well, the turnout really happened in early voting. This is a state where about 2/3 of the voters do vote early, and that ended on Friday. I'm standing, Wolf, in the busiest polling place, what should be the busiest polling place in the biggest county in Nevada, and take a look. It's a little bit quiet, and don't read too much into this. The head of this particular polling place says, but it has been like this quite a bit of the day. Even as you look at the voting machines, there are so many of them waiting for people to show up. This is the story of Nevada, that early voting has been so successful. And I want to give you a look here too, Wolf. If you can swing all the way around, I'm going to walk over this way. The friendly faces you see over here, these are election observers. They are keeping an eye for anything representing both sides, both campaigns, Wolf.
Good thing about early voting, I should say, Kyung, is that they usually release those numbers very quickly on this night in Las Vegas. We've got some more fresh exit polling coming in right now for that. I want to go back to our political director, David Chalian. So what are you seeing in those exit poll results, Dave?
Well, remember, I just want to caution, these are preliminary exit poll results from across the nation. These numbers likely will change. We're taking a look now at the racial makeup of the electorate. Look at this. 70% of the voters voting today, white, 12% African American, 11% Latino, 4% Asian. So how does this compare to 4 years ago? Well, the white vote has ticked down a little bit. 4 years ago, this is 72% white electorate. It was a 10% Latino electorate. That's ticked up a notch. But it is roughly in line with what we saw 4 years ago. There's not a dramatic shift in the overall racial makeup of the electorate nationwide. Again, these are preliminary exit poll results, and these numbers can certainly and likely will change as more exit poll results come in. We also wanted to get sort of the motivation behind why people are voting for their candidate. Take a look at this. 42% of voters today tell us they are voting for the candidate that they're voting for because they strongly favor them. With all the negativity in this campaign, this is a bit of a surprise to me. I thought maybe this would be higher. Only 25% of voters today say they're making their choice because they dislike the opponent. With these negatives really high on both Trump and Clinton, two very unliked candidates, I thought maybe more people would be voting for their opponents. But no, people out there today, a plurality of them, 42% say they're voting today strongly in favor of the person they're voting for.
And what you say, David, is these numbers will change as more exit polling results come in. Is that right?
That's right. More interviews are being conducted. Certainly, these numbers are more about East Coast interviews. It has interviews from across the nation, but throughout the night, you can go across the time zones of the country, and more from across the country will be feeding in throughout the night.
And we'll be checking back with you often. David, thank you. Anderson, over to you.
Well, thanks very much. Back to the panel. Of course, it's interesting that only 20-some-odd% is voting because of who the person's opponent is, given the high dislikes that, frankly, both these candidates have.
Well, I think a lot of the narratives that we've been talking about in this race from the very beginning are just being shattered. I mean, people talked about the fact that this was going to be a low turnout race because both candidates were so disliked. What we're going to see is that we're going to have turnout that breaks all records. I think that you can attribute that to the ground game and the direct outreach to minorities of Hillary Clinton, and I think that you can direct that to Donald Trump's populism on steroids, is what I like to call it. Talking about feeling the pain of these working class voters in places like Ohio and Pennsylvania, that's going to be the test tonight. But if you look at some of these numbers, one of the other numbers that stuck out were the participation of minority voters in this election. I think that you actually have to take away from the national sample and begin to look at these numbers in the states like North Carolina, in the states like Florida, because as we start to see the numbers come out about 7:30, 8 o'clock in Florida, you will start to see the impact of voters of color on this race, and that may not bode well for Donald Trump.
Andre, what stands out to you?
One of the big things that stands out to me is if you look at the money that was spent on this. Donald Trump, unconventional candidate, has been able to come in and run against almost every establishment. And if you look at what Hillary Clinton's camp was spending money to turn out vote versus Donald Trump, it shows there is a new way to campaign in this country, and it will be interesting to see. I'd like to just see per vote, when it's all said and done, what the Democrats had to spend per vote getting their candidates out, or their voters out, versus what the Republicans.
If in the final analysis, though, Maria, Hillary Clinton wins, isn't that really all that matters?
It doesn't. I was just going to interject and say, except for if Hillary Clinton wins, none of that will matter.
I disagree. That doesn't mean you don't study that to move forward.
Well, but then what I would say is, then what will be underscored is how smart an investment the Hillary Clinton campaign was from day one. the kind of ground game that she has put together, the kind of infrastructure that we are now seeing that is pulling out every single one of the demographics that support her.
And if Hillary Clinton loses and Donald Trump wins, I mean, there's going to be a whole new analysis to Andre's point of how campaigns get run in the future because it's been run for, much less than what the Democrats.
You don't mean the people control Washington again instead of special interests?
Well, let's not go that far.
But to Kari's point, I think what you're going to see tonight is you're going to see massive turnout across the country. I think that's a good thing for the country. I'm looking at the early numbers coming back in the state of New Hampshire, state I know very well. If you look at what the vote totals were in 2012, many towns have already reached or exceeded the vote totals from 2012. And this is a state that doesn't have early voting. That means people before 5 o'clock tonight have gone and voted at a higher level of participation than they did in the entire 2012 presidential election. I think that's a great thing.
Well, also, when you look back, and Donald Trump has a lot to do with this, the numbers, people watching the primary debates, unprecedented from the beginning, from the get-go, people have been engaged in this election.
Well, that's also why you're going to be able to tell a lot about this race early on along the East Coast, because you do have New Hampshire, you have Virginia, you have North Carolina, you have Florida. And if you look at Florida, and if you look at the dynamics of this race, if Donald Trump does not win Florida, that's game, set, match. I mean, that's it. There aren't many paths that he can get to the White House that don't include him having an inside straight. I mean,
Polls close Florida, what, 7:30?
7, and then you have some at 8, and somewhere at 8 when you get across through the Panhandle. So you will have these votes come out periodically throughout the night, and we'll be able to see what's going on pretty early.
Yeah. In past elections, it's been what, like 11:30 or so that we've often called races. Is that?
Yeah, 11. The AP usually comes around between 11 and
2000, a little bit longer. We're less than 30 minutes away from the first polls closing on this historic election day. No matter how you look at it, stay with us throughout the night. Our coverage continues in just a moment.